This is a Rockport Select Board workshop to bring everybody up to speed on where we are in the library project and a bunch of different areas. I have an agenda that if you haven't picked one up front, you can grab it. And this things within the, for example, presentation for the design team, they may not necessarily go in the order that's on the agenda, but I think they'll hit all of these things as they go through it. We'll hear from them first. And then we'll hear from the Rockport Library Foundation. And questions from the audience will be welcome at just about any time. I think you may want to let the presenters get through some of their material before you hop up for a question. But if you do ask a question, we ask that you come up to the podium and use the microphone so the folks at home can hear the question. This meeting is being live streamed, and so for those who are not here, they'll be able to take a look at it and get a full update on where we stand with the library project at this time. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the design team, starting with Bettina, I guess. She said she was going to go first. And if each one of you could go across and introduce yourselves for the folks at home, that'd be great.
Sure. I am Bettina Dalton, owner of Phi Builders and Architects. Phi has been hired as the owner's rep for the town on the project.
Charlie Pertini, the on-site owner's rep for Phi Builders and Architects.
Stephen Smith, architect for the project.
And Will Gartley, with Gartley and Dorsey Engineering and Surveying.
It's all yours, Bettina.
Perfect. Good evening, everybody. As I mentioned, I am Bettina Dalton, owner of Phi Builders and Architects. Phi has been hired as the owner's representative for the town for the new library project. Our intent is to make some opening comments, overview comments from me, and quickly introduce the people, highly engaged people who are making it all happen. As Rick Bates emphasized to me months ago, this is an important project for the town. It has to go well. I think he was making sure that I was very clear on how important this is for the town. And he made the comment that it's a unifying effort going forward. The budget has to be hit. For this project to be a success, many constituencies, hired professionals, passionate volunteers, our townspeople, our town leadership have to work towards the common goal of our new library opening its doors in 2020 on schedule and budget. We are all advocates for this project. What are we advocating for? An aesthetically beautiful, functional library for our community, funded by private and public monies, built on schedule and budget. Priorities have been set and processes put in place to ensure that the myriad details are considered and addressed properly. The weekly design meeting gathers the architect, engineer, owner's rep, librarian, library committee, Doug Cole, Ken McKinley, Rick Bates at the core. These meetings are proving to be incredibly valuable as a means of sharing progress updates, addressing open items, issues, and defining and refining action items and task lists. This group is not letting anything fester, which I think is the most important element of this. Nothing's getting ignored. The flywheel is working. Having sat in these meetings, I can assure you these meetings are not check-the-box affairs. There is active discussion, debate, and then agreement of next steps. Tonight, we're going to give you an update on the design, the schedule, the fundraising, and the bond financing. And I understand you gave us some specific questions. I'm going to hold those until Stephen and Charlie give you a bit of an overview on the design and the project schedule, and then we'll address some of these individual items that don't get picked up in that, and then we'll move on to the financing if that's okay. Okay, Stephen?
Currently, we are in the construction document phase of the project. We've completed the design and design development, which is defining the footprint of the building, designing all the spaces within the building and the building elevations and site design. The construction document phase represents about 40% of our work, and it's the nuts and bolts of how to put the building together, which includes mechanical engineers, structural engineers, electrical engineers, and all the consultants that will be working with us to prepare what we call a bid set of documents that we anticipate will be done in the next month and a half. And at that point, this project will go out for a formal bid to the general contractors. During this process, we're also evaluating the cost of the development of the drawings, and if there are any questions regarding not only the cost but the structural design or site engineering, Will and Charlie can answer those questions.
Charlie, can you give us an update on the working schedule for the timeline for all of the steps to get us from here to the doors opening?
Yes. Right now, we've completed the design development portion of the schedule.
And this is on the right side, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Charlie. This is, for those of you I handed this to, this is on the right side of this
And
document.
the
that-
handout that we issued, it has dates. You'll see project schedule. It shows targeted schedule on the left and working schedule. Targeted schedule was the initial schedule, and we've actually fine-tuned that and given a greater depth to our schedules. Right now, the working schedule is what we're actually designing this building off of. The design development is completed. The drawings have been issued by the architect, and the structural engineer has been working with us on his design development, or had worked with us on his design development. He actually moved forward right into construction document phase. The construction document phase is scheduled to be completed in 2 days, which is Wednesday of this week, actually tomorrow. I was thinking today was Monday. Tomorrow. 50% completion of documents, and we are on schedule for that. The 75% completion, as you can see, is the end of January. 100% construction documents will be completed in the middle of February. We are on schedule for that, and it's imperative that we do remain on that schedule because we're looking to have the bid by the end of February. That gives us the bid review and award by the end of March and allows us to break the ground by the 15th of April. Now, why is that important? It's important because we're at the effort to save money, because budget is a constriction to this project. We want to save money, so we're going to get into the ground early and complete the building and envelope and the heating systems before the winter. So we don't have to pay, we meaning the town of Rockport, has to pay for temporary heat. We can use the existing or the new systems in place instead of providing temporary heat, which is a cost overrun, or could be a potential cost overrun. Groundbreaking is scheduled for the 15th of April with a construction completion for August of 2020.
Question. I might have heard two different things. Out for formal bid by the end of this month. Did I hear that?
Out for
No.
formal bid by the end of February, and then the award of the bid by the end of March.
Okay.
And if you look on your schedule, sir, you'll see it says bid,
Yep.
bid document completion. Construction document completion and bid document completion are two different avenues. Construction document completion is obviously all the drawings, plans, and specifications. Then they have to be created into a bid document and goes out to the contractors.
All right, so it's going out for bid. The package is going out for bid. Shows here, target 25th of Feb.
That's correct. To give an overview of any other questions on schedule? Of course, once we get it with the general contract and the bid is awarded, there'll be an additional schedule that is more in-depth as far as relates to construction. This is a schedule that gets us to the start of construction. Moving forward and talking about the existing site and answering some of your questions that the Select Board has presented, report on demolition. The building has been demolished, the site has been backfilled and leveled off, and there is a construction or a temporary fence. It's a low fence around the project site. It has been marked with no trespassing signs, and the site is relatively safe, and nobody's going to fall in a hole. So
Do you
that
want to
is
share
done.
with why the decision was to pull that demolition forward versus let it be part of the bid process?
Normally, the demolition would be part of the bid, and as Bettina just alluded to, we decided as a team to move it forward simply because there were no borings. We didn't know what the soil was like underneath the building. That's critical and key to the bid process. We need to get as much information out on to the bidders so that we can keep the costs without having any ambiguity in the bid. So the costs have to be contained. Taking the building down now was crucial because we were allowed to do test pits, which Will Gartley and his team can give some information on. But we were allowed to do test pits under the building, which didn't exist prior to. We had some borings taken around the building, and we had a good idea of what the soil and subsurface conditions were around the structure, which was existing. And now we need to know what's happening under the existing structure, which is precisely why we removed the building. Will, you want to explain what happened when we took it down?
Yeah, we did a grid pattern of test holes within the footprint of the new proposed building and found a hump of ledge basically in the middle of the building. So at least now we can define that. We have elevations, exact location, and we can show a pretty good profile to the contractors of exactly what needs to come out for ledge.
Were any of the test bores that have been done in the recent past able to be used?
Yeah, there was two that were between Lime Rock Street and the library that were able to be used, but most of that focus was from there and into the park.
Yeah, I didn't know. I knew that they had done a bunch of them. I just didn't know
Yeah.
whether any of them were
There were two
beneficial.
of them that kind of led us to knowing that we really needed more because we did hit ledge on the two that were between Lime Rock Street and the old face of the library.
Well, at this point, ballpark estimate of how confident are we at this point with the ledge removal? Are we fairly confident we have a good idea of what the ledge removal volumes are gonna be?
We do, yeah,
Yeah.
yep, we've.
There's
because
always
we-
some, there's always
because-
some piece that's unknown,
Yeah, I mean,
but,
our grid pattern, I think, was 25 or 30 feet
We did
on
25
center.
foot on center, yeah.
So that's a pretty intense, and it's, we were able to get a pretty good profile of what's under there. And that data is gonna be very helpful. And we've talked to blasting companies already and gotten some ballparks from them. Because this is gonna be competitively bid, I'd just as soon not say what those numbers are. But we do have a pretty good confidence level on what it's going to take to remove the ledge that we need to remove.
And when he says remove, we're looking to blast it down to a certain elevation. We'll make a determination at that point, get an alternate in the blasting bid, whether it's to be removed by the blasting contractor or one of his subs, or we do it as part of the general contracting for the new building. And when we took the test pits that Will laid out for us, there were many times that we did trenching instead of an actual pit. We'd find ledge in a certain area, and we'd want to follow it to see if it, because ledge, as perhaps we don't all know, but as I know, goes up and down and doesn't stay consistent. So we trenched quite a bit of it, and we have a very accurate representation of what the rock is below us.
Couple of quick questions. One on the ledge removal costs, and I understand we don't want to go into actual numbers, but we had a preliminary number in some of the budgets that we had worked up. Are we in that ballpark, or close, or way above, way below?
We're always above. I don't want it to be anything. I want it to be as close to zero as possible. The ledge removal with the numbers that we have will be absorbed by the new building construction budget.
Okay.
It will come out of a contingency. We have to find, we won't know that answer until the actual building goes out to bid and we see where the numbers come back at. Right now, it is being absorbed by the construction budget.
Okay, so it's within a
Yes.
Right.
reasonable, whatever. That's all I want to know. And then the other thing was the nature of the ledge. I know we had talked at one point about some types of rock being more difficult to remove, others being easier to remove. Where do we stand with that?
When we dug our test pits, we tested the rock, and unfortunately, sometimes you get ledge acts more like a schist, which is very easily removed, and some you get that acts like a granite. Unfortunately, the rock here in Maine is acting like a granite. Exactly.
Named Rockport for a reason. Okay, thanks. Anybody else have any further questions about
No.
this topic? Okay.
thank you for that explanation as to why the demolition was done earlier than later.
Status of the site, currently the site has been backfilled, it has been made safe, as I said earlier, and it is fenced. I drive around it occasionally. I don't go too often because I don't want to spend money for the town, but as far as I know, it is protected.
And we've removed some trees, I believe, as well.
The town did remove trees, yes. And we wanted to do that as much as possible before the building gets up. Additionally, there's stream work that's involved, and we wanted to get that out before the stream work would proceed. Proposed project timeline. We're on target. The only answer to this is we're on target for all our schedules. Unless something should come up, and we always have unforeseen conditions, even in negotiations with how we get bid documents presented. But as of right now, I don't see any issue with something being an obstacle to completing this project as far as design is concerned and getting it out to bid on our schedule.
Do you want me to make some comments on the cost estimates?
Absolutely.
Obviously, at the point where we are in this going out to bid in the beginning of March, we're working on preliminary estimates from Phase 1 design, which was, we had 4 estimates come in. Based on those, everything is right on target for the $3.5 million.
Good. And I think it's important for the public to know that early in this project, that the design team, with the select board's blessing, kind of went above and beyond the normal pre-vote work on the budget estimate. Did some extra work because we really wanted to narrow it down to make sure that when we went to the voters, we felt good about the budget number that we had. And I think you're telling us that budget number is looking reasonable at this point.
Remember that design meeting that I say is very interactive at times? Everything is focused. I'm here for your entertainment, Rick. So that discussion, I don't think, do we go through a week conversation where that budget number doesn't come up and ensuring that there is everything being in place in value engineering and nothing getting away from us at this phase?
Yeah, and as I say, my comment is mostly for the general public listening at this point, because.
No, it's
as-
important.
As others know, there have been other projects in the area that have had some surprises in the bid project, and we've worked very hard to make sure that that doesn't happen for this project.
It's probably a good point to bring up, too, that the additional work that we did ahead of time with this group that ordinarily wouldn't have been done until after the vote was really essentially financed by the library committee, and I'll give a nod to Ann there, because they covered, I believe, all of this upfront cost. And so it was definitely a risk to them. If the vote had failed, they would have been out quite a bit of money. So again, thanks to Ann.
Well, and it's all, as Charlie and Bettina said, this is all driven by the goal to save some money in the project as a
In the
whole.
long run.
It's save money and make sure that every dollar that's spent is invested wisely with a big impact.
Right.
And there's going to be places along the project that you're going to see that you want to make sure that you are getting the most for every dollar that is spent on this.
I assure you that each of our committee meetings, whether it's Bettina or myself, repeatedly bringing up budget issues, and we're very cautious with what this project is representing for the budget.
You asked that we address the cash flow requirements. And we're still early on, and obviously this is really important as you start to tie in the conversation about the bond financing and the fundraising element, the private and public monies that are coming into play. If you start to think of a project that goes into ground break mode in April, and the timing of expenditures that are construction-related from there, my understanding is that the fundraising has a certain amount of cash that's already come in, plus a bridge financing that the town has. That combination sets us up very nicely. We had a big discussion about this actually just on Thursday to ensure that the cash flow going up through the beginning of this and into 2019 was lined up before the bond financing came in. And those three pieces look like they are lining up perfectly.
What's your breakdown between pledges and cash?
That's for
no.
the other group to.
I get to stand up and go like this really soon.
I didn't know, Just picking your brain to see if you had that.
I actually have a really good, we got a good update on this on Thursday, actually, so I don't want to ruin their presentation. So we have a good understanding, and the reason we had this conversation at the design meeting on Thursday was very much for this, which is we're sitting here in January of 2019. We know the expenditures, be it for demo that has already happened, for tree removal, for the boring. We know that the design fees are still coming in. The, different things are actually expenditures that are happening even as we go up to that ground break in April. And so to combine that with the foundation support before the vote that has been spent and spent wisely, now we, from here until that bond financing, there are expenditures happening, and then that initial, how do you start to forecast how the construction over that period of time from, call it April to August, that, 16 months?
16 months, roughly.
Thank you. I can do big numbers, I can't do 16 months. And how is that going to flow? So Charlie and I have started to forecast how a typical project lays out, percent of the budget. You have expenditures that are heavy up front as you do the initial site work and the framing and all those things, and then you go through more of a plateau through the middle, and then it peaks again as you go into finish. And the cash flow combined with the bridge financing, the funding from the foundation that's cash already, efforts that is cash already, and that bridge financing, you're looking fine right through 2019.
And all the expenditures that are being caused now are to get information and to complete things that are not going to be upcharged by a general contractor. The purpose of it is to spend that money now without overhead and profit by a GC, or getting more information to him, because more unknowns that go to a GC for a bid cost you money.
Yeah, that design team has spent a lot of time working on clearing those kind of unknowns and answering as many unknowns as we can answer to limit that kind of question in the bidder's mind about what are they bidding on. And one of the huge ones is the ledge. And then there's some others, and we've worked really hard to try and anticipate all of those unknowns now and check those boxes off if we can earlier, so that they're bidding, they know exactly what they're bidding on.
We want as few alts, we want as few TBDs in that bid document that go out as possible. So my understanding is it's time for us to introduce the fundraising team.
Does anybody have any further questions of the design team, both on the board and in the audience?
We can bring them back too
Yeah.
after.
So if nobody has any questions, then we'll bring the Rockport Library Foundation folks up and,
Except for one for you, but
Just hanging out.
just the two of you? Anybody else? I know, you don't wanna come up and sit with these guys?
You're leaving them to take,
Okay, I will ask you guys, as I did the previous, to introduce yourselves for the folks at home, and while you're doing that, would you holler off the names of those who are in the audience who are involved as well, who wanna come up so they can at least wave their arms?
can you turn that mic towards you a little? Yeah, there you go.
How's that?
That's good.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for inviting us to come in tonight to,
You need to introduce yourself.
Bill Leone, Rockport Library Capital Committee.
And I'm Philip Conkling I'm the fundraising counsel for the Rockport Library Foundation.
And we have some other members of the core group. I know I see Joan Welsh and
Yeah, Joan
Ann and
Welch
John
back there.
Veman. Am I forgetting anybody? But they've been integral to this, as I'm sure you
Right.
folks would say.
Right. Okay. The Rockport Library Capital Committee was formed in March of 2018. The committee is made up of the following Rockport volunteer residents: Joan Welch, co-chair; Bill Leone, co-chair; Ann Philly, Rockport Library Committee; John Veman, marketing director; attorney Denise Munger; Kate Monroe, an accountant; Peter Ralston, photographer, gallery owner locally here; Ben Blackman, library director and ad hoc member of our group. The committee retained Philip Conkling and Associates of Camden as our consultant. Philip is well known for founding the Island Institute and has been instrumental in our success to date. Philip has guided us in all phases of our fundraising. The Rockport Capital Committee began meeting weekly in March of 2018. The first order of business was to map out a 3-year capital campaign strategy that included an extensive prospect review. It involved a prospective donor list that confirmed our $2 million goal was reasonable and, in fact, assured us that we were well within the parameters of the overall plan. We then developed a statement of need, of which came the Heart of Our Town campaign, which I think you're all familiar with. As part of our fundraising tactics, we developed a list of naming opportunities: press releases to newspapers, online services, as well as a letter-writing campaign to ensure a positive November bond vote. We reached our $1 million goal on October 15th, a month prior to the vote. As of this date, we have received pledges of $1.3 million, or 2/3 of the goal. This has been accomplished in just 6 months. Given that our quiet phase ran through October and the public phase only began after the November vote, we're very energized and pleased by the townwide support and are now ready to begin our next phase of fundraising. We currently have $540,000 cash on hand from pledges. We just completed a resident and seasonal resident donor mailing and will not have the final tally until the middle of January. We've applied for and received for grants from several foundations and will be applying for additional grants in 2019. So I'm now going to turn to my friend Philip here, and he will tell you a little bit about what we've been doing.
Sure. You know, basically, fundraising is a mysterious process for some people, but it's really simple in its fundamentals. And the fundamental rule that I've always used in my 40 years of begging is that people give to people. They have to like the project, but it's the people who are behind it that really build the confidence in the donor communities to actually dig deep and decide they're going to get behind. There are lots of good ideas out there, but you get behind the projects that are well-led, well-organized, and have a great group of volunteers, and that's part of the reason that I was eager to get involved. I know the whole committee well and have known many of its members for years and years. So the quiet phase of the campaign, you know, after looking at our prospects, you have to assign probabilities, and you have to see if you are going to be successful. You need to be very specific about where the success is going to come. And so our initial face-to-face meetings, asking people have been very successful. 66% of the people that we met with agreed to make a commitment, a pledge. The pledges were what we were dealing with until the vote. And our goal was to reach $1 million in pledges before the vote to give confidence to the rest of the voters that there was a lot of support and enthusiasm to bring the project forward. So the donors that we have talked to want to know exactly where they're like Bettina and Charlie were saying. They want to know where the money is going in the building, and what's included and what isn't, and so it gets very specific with, and we've had great support, as I said, from our lead donors, and there's a lot of excitement. Every phase of this campaign builds momentum to the next phase, so that when the bids come in, that's going to be another, really important time for the donor community, and we're hopeful and expect that will be a springboard to the next round of fundraising. So we've got a spring campaign planned, and then another summer campaign, and our goal is to finish up by the end of 2019.
I'm going to back up a little bit and give you some more information about the initial phase of our efforts, and our marketing group was tasked to create a plan to assure the positive vote in November. And that group consisted of John Veman, Larry Lehman, Heather Mackey, and Betsy Saltonstall. And they support our efforts going forward with promotional materials, which are very important for our success. Let me tell you a little bit about the Rockport Library Foundation. We formalized our efforts by establishing the Rockport Library Foundation, whose sole purpose was to raise money for the Rockport Library. Ann Philly is the president of the foundation, John Veman, vice president, Bill Leone is the treasurer, Joan Welch, secretary, Ed Collins is the agent clerk, and other directors are Peter Ralston, Kate Monroe, and Betsy Saltonstall. The foundation applied and received a 501c3 nonprofit designation from the IRS that became effective June 4th, 2018. And that's basically when we started our quiet phase with the goal of raising $1 million by the November vote. Efforts during that period during that phase of the campaign were generously seeded by the Rockport Library Committee. None of this would have got off the ground without the help from the committee. During the summer, we had several receptions for potential donors, and we call that libraries and libations, excuse me. We told our story, answered questions, and followed up with the attendees. And one of these receptions helped us solidify a $100,000 gift. It was very important. The marketing committee developed the Let's Build It public face of the campaign to get the vote out, which included mailings and lawn signs. And we've also identified potential donors in the business community that we'll be developing as a group as we go forward. We'll be dialing for dollar nights to follow up on our mailings, and Ben is setting up some brick sales in the library that can be named. Some of you, I think, know about that. We've recently received a $100,000 matching grant promotion, which will kick off in the first quarter of 2019. This has really been a very large group effort. So before I close, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the support from the Library Committee, especially the early seed money funding that they provided, which really made all this possible. And I want to make a special thanks to Heaven Bartlett and Ann Philly, Stevie Cumble, Liz Daly, and Helen Shaw. Additionally, would like to acknowledge the leadership gift from the Friends of the Library Committee with a special thank you to the committee members, Kathleen Meal, Betsy Elwin, Nelda McLennan, and Ann Philly. Kudos to all of them. We're very lucky to have such a dedicated group of volunteers to provide the hard work and expertise to raise the funds needed to build the new library. I'm very proud to have the opportunity to work with my partners in this journey. But before I close, let me just underscore for everyone here just how important our efforts that we present a united and positive front about building our new library. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here in Rockport in front of us, and it'll be a jewel in the crown of Rockport. But it only happens if we remain committed and, above all, positive about accomplishing our goal. So let's get to work and build the library.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right, now I'm gonna ask these questions, they're kind of pointy, all right, but they're in the spirit of positive regard, so, and that's to make sure that we're successful in the fundraising activity. You listed, we have a goal, obviously, 2 million plus. We'll go with 2. All right, and when you're doing stuff like this, you've got to lay out a plan where you've got milestones and the steps to milestones as to what you're gonna do each month or each week, whatever it might be, and then what your end goal should be, or at least your intermediate goals, short-term interval controls, we call them. All right, so do you have a plan where you've laid out, in January, we're gonna do these 8 things, and at the end of January, our target is to have this much money identified and pledged. We're gonna do these items in these activities in February, and at the end of February, our goal is to have this, so that you've got some milestones to get to the 2 million at your end point. And then what activities are you gonna do in there to drive that? I see the words, we are exactly where we should be. All right, but I don't have a document in front of me that says we should be at 1.3 million on January 8th. And we should be 1.4 million on February 1st, and 1.5 million on March 1st, et cetera. And these are the actions we're doing to get there.
Well, I think the short answer is yes, there's a plan. You know, there's a plan that's broken down by month, month by month, by month by month. In fundraising, there's what we call the 80-20 rule. 80% of your total dollar amount comes from 20% of your donors. So we have a list of people that we're going to see. We don't know exactly when we're going to see them because some people are traveling. You don't know which month you're going to get the meeting necessarily, but
Let me ask it maybe a little bit differently. You identified some activities of recent that included going out for grants, all right, and identified grant opportunities. So I'm looking for a plan that says in February we're going to apply to 5 grants, and we expect to hear from them in March. You identified the recent mailings and activities for a certain group of people that you just sent out. That's an action item on that list of steps to milestones that I'm talking about. Is that laid out somewhere where we can see these are the types of activities that should be
Yeah, it's
happening
laid
month by
out.
month?
It's a foundation document. I don't think, it's not up to me to say whether the foundation would share that information. There's a lot of confidential information in there.
I'm not looking for confidential information. All I'm looking for is what are the activities? We're gonna apply for we're gonna apply for grants in January. We're going to send mailings to non-resident taxpayers in
I think,
February.
I think one of the things that could simplify it is, we're gonna be asked on February 11th to set the process in motion to go for our money. So we have to have some more information on where you plan to be down the road. Are you gonna have 1.7 in June, or where do you anticipate being beyond the 1.3 now?
Well,
Yeah,
we.
put your crystal ball on, I guess, is.
Yeah,
what
I
do you-
mean, it's, you've got to ask 2 to 3 times as many people or as many, dollars as you're going to get. I mean, and you look at your results to date. The results to date on the face-to-face meetings have been fantastic. That's, the results on the mailings have been in a range that are, they're sort of different levels of that. There are residents that we know where there's a personalized appeal. It's a mail appeal, so it's not, it's not a face-to-face meeting. And then there's a sort of a dear Rockport resident letter. And you expect different rates of return from those, mailings. So we have a schedule of mailings. We have a projection of what those mailings will do. We have, but fundamentally, it's going to come down to face-to-face meetings, and you've got to have, you've got to have enough of those scheduled. They're primarily going to be scheduled in the summer. I think, we'll get some in February, March. There's going to be Bill mentioned this challenge grant. That's a great, and we're pressing, part of the goal is to press hard around the groundbreaking. You see, if the groundbreaking is to go forward after the bids have been received, that's a confidence-building move. That's when we're going to go back with another push. So each phase builds on, the last phase. The next phase is going to come when people who have been holding back, and there are some people who want to, like you, are these numbers going to work? Are the construction numbers going to work? We've been talking to donors who say, we'll talk to you after we see those numbers. So,
Can I, can I just rephrase maybe the questions, because I think I see what Mark is getting at. Clearly, the name of a donor is confidential. We don't want to know that you're talking to John Q. Doe on, April. But there is an overall plan of what you expect to do during the month of January, during the month of February, what events you have in March. Do you guys consider that overall plan minus any names or anything proprietary, or is that something you could share with us?
I think it would be proprietary.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Speaking in terms of the foundation.
yeah.
You should
You know,
come up.
it's
you
And
should
would
come
you,
up.
would you come up, please? Sorry.
Uh-oh.
Bringing in the heavy artillery now.
Make sure you tip the microphone towards you, and we're getting some complaints that people can't hear.
Yes, and, I appreciate your comments and your questions very much. And, I'm not an expert fundraiser by any means, but I think that if you look at what has been done over a very short period of time, you did not at that particular point ask us to say, what is your plan and how are you going to get to that 1 million? I think, and I believe wholeheartedly, that based on what we've discussed so far, is that we are in the process of completing our strategic plan for the year. But I think at this point, me personally, as the president of the foundation, I'm not comfortable in saying, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're going to provide to you. I think we can give you generalities, and maybe, others feel differently, but I think.
I mean, what I'm looking for, what are the key activities by month? I'm not looking for who you're gonna talk to, and when you're gonna talk to them. What are the key activities, like mailing number 3 goes to general public in March, or push number 3 of
Yeah,
Group B?
we can provide that,
I mean,
Jeff.
just to see what the activity level looks like, because as Mark said, we've got to have a good
Right.
sense and a good feel that the activities are gonna lead to the results that are required by the time that they're
Yeah,
required.
that's a key for the board, is that on our meeting, as I put in the agenda on February 11th, moving forward, this board has to make a finding. And the finding has to be that it's quite likely that the private fundraising, which is you folks, will meet the goal. And because that's when we have to decide on the bond. We can't wait any longer to decide on the bond, or we miss the construction season. So, anything more that you guys can provide us by that February 11th date will be really helpful, because that's a hard vote for us to take, because if
Well, I
if we're not successful, then we've committed the town to, taking out a bond, and we can't complete the project, or it gets delayed a year, and then the costs go way up and stuff like that. And I have all the confidence, I mean, you guys have a terrific group. I have all the confidence that it is going to be successful, but I think it is going to be really important on that February 11th meeting for us to really have a good handle on that.
And I think some of the information that was originally put out by us around the town was that we weren't going to go after our bond until the money had been raised. So we have to have a very good confidence level that the money will be there, so that on February 11th, we can proceed forward on our end.
Well, if I can jump in a little bit. First of all, this is art, not science, Jeff. You're not going to get it down to engineering terms.
I'm not looking for that.
Okay, but we can give you a plan, and we will. We will give you a very specific plan of what steps we're going to take, which I think will increase your comfort level quite a bit. Bear in mind here, we've only been at this 6 months. We've raised $1.3 million in 6 months. Two-thirds of the goal.
That's not a question, but we were only 150 people away from not having this meeting tonight. So I want to try to, when the vote happened,
Well,
I'm just trying to make sure that we go forward as best we can.
Yeah, I understand, and I would have the same concerns were I in your chair as well. But, capital campaigns usually have, Philip may be able to speak to this a little bit more, but capital campaigns are multi-year projects. We've done something here that, if it should do anything, it should give you more confidence than make you wonder, are we going to be able to do it?
No, I just want to make sure that's not my concern, is whether I have all the confidence in the world you're going to raise the money.
Okay.
I just want to see what is the plan between now and then as to what are the activities that are going to happen to do that, so that I can get a good sense that the actions are there. You know what you want to do. You already know what you want to do by month. I've heard it. You
Sure.
vocalized it. All I'm asking is put it on a piece of paper so that we have something to hang on to.
And we can do that, but again, we did have a goal of $1 million by the vote. We exceeded that. We had $1.3 million by this time, and we're right on track, right where we said we would want to be.
And so the next milestone is
Yep.
what? By when?
Okay.
That's, what's that piece look like?
We've got, by June 2019, we want to be able to see $2 million, be within sight of $2 million.
Good.
Pledge.
That's an ambitious milestone.
It's ambitious, but I'm saying you want a goal,
Yep.
that's our goal. What we'll give you is a plan, and this may not, we may not be exactly at 2.0 million by June,
we certainly aren't going to be there by February. I'm not sure what the date is that you want to be, but, I could be wrong. Somebody could walk in tomorrow and surprise us.
For those who are out there and want to listen, how do they get in touch with you?
And that,
I would just like to say, I, like Philip, have raised.
Would you come to the mic,
Yeah.
Joan, please?
I, like Philip, have worked on capital campaigns for years, many of which have been like $10 million. They're a lot of work, whether it's 2 or 10, and they aren't necessarily a straight line that you can absolutely predict. You're absolutely right about wanting to see what kinds of actions we're taking, and we have those that I think, as John said, we can give you. I would say that our getting to 2 million by June leaves out our whole summer season, which is really important time. So I would say our goal is more towards by the end of 2019, we will have that money raised. But I would say, again, that we can give you all the steps we're going to be taking, but as Philip has said, it's more art than science. We're working hard. We've had wonderful support from many, many people. It's been so encouraging to see the outpouring of support that's in this room and beyond, well beyond. So we do have every confidence that we can raise the money, and with Philip's help, our quiet phase was in fact a true feasibility study that, yes, we're going to be able to make the 2 million.
The other thing that I'll add is that, there are a lot of moving pieces here. There's the select board, there's the building committee, there's the library committee, there's Friends of Rockport Library, there is the Rockport Library Foundation. And to the extent that we're all seen as pulling together, that's really critical for building the confidence in the donor community. So, you need confidence that from us that we're going to produce, and we need confidence from you that the select board is, continues to be excited about this, and it's a high priority. And I think you've done that, and that's why we're where we are today, because the select board has been so solidly behind this plan.
Let me just maybe say it a little bit differently to bring the group to ease. We're going to have, at some point in time, a construction package and a very structured project plan. And the general contractor and the project managers are going to be laying out almost day by day what pipe has to go in, where it's going to go, when the toilets are going to go in, when the countertops are going to go on. It's all going to be in a project management application that says these are all the steps and these are the milestones to get there, so that they know every week, am I on track, am I ahead or behind, and then allocate resources and activities to bring it back on track. It's just micromanagement of a project. Fundraising is a similar activity.
Incorrect. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
That's
But
what
there's
we're trying
a
to
lot
say.
of variable, I understand there's variables.
Well, let's let Philip address the issue there.
The first thing I said is that people give to people. So the people that we're talking to, they've all got different interests, they want to see, they have different kinds of questions. We're not doing direct mail campaign here, where you can apply a percentage rate of return. We're going to, to people who we've identified as being interested and persuadable and have capacity to support this project privately. But there's no fundraising professional in the United States, in my opinion, who is going to, say, this is, on a leadership capital campaign. If you're doing a direct mail campaign, you can, you buy lists, you qualify those lists, you pump them, you pump them out there, you know what your rate of return is, and if your materials are good, you can say month by month by month by month how much you're going to get. It's not that kind of campaign.
You are correct. from an action standpoint, you probably have in your mind that you'd like to talk to 60% of your target group by July 1st. That's the type of action step I'm looking for, and that you'd like to cover the next 20% over the next 2 months, and then have them all talked to by the end of October or something. That's the only level of detail I'm looking at. What activities are there that will get us to where we want to go?
Sure, and I think John has said,
Yeah.
and
we
Bill, we can do that.
It's not micro detail. It's just, what are the
But you
general
can't do
activities?
it, you can't say month by month by month what your revenue is going to be, because you're dealing with
I
people
understand
who
that.
have,
But-
you can't. or-
You presented the target. The target is, I mean, an aggressive goal is June. You'd like to have all the money identified. But reality says it's going to be something different from that. I understand that. I'm just trying to think, what are the activities that we're going to do to
Happy to
get
do
there?
that.
That's all.
Yeah, and Jeff, if I could just, again, reemphasize that until we had the vote, we were in a quiet phase of this campaign. So the vote happened November 6th. It's 2 months since that vote. So we've only been public in this whole effort for 2 months. So it's important to keep some of this in context.
And I'm not losing that, and I'm not losing the perspective. All I'm asking for, and I think everybody would benefit, is to see what are the activities that are going to drive to the end goal.
Steve,
Just a quick question for Rick Bates. Could you explain the process of the application for the bond and what the options the select board and the town has
Yep.
after that bond application has been processed? I think there's a safeguard out there that you don't realize exists, and if you
Well,
explain that, it would
it's
help.
not that much of a safeguard, but it's, but the dates that we're working on aren't arbitrary dates. In order for us to meet a timeline of a breaking ground and all of that, we've had to back into a lot of things so that, with Megan's back there someplace, right, Megan? Yep. We had to go back and look at what the bond issuance dates are, when we have to do all of that work, and when the select board has to make their finding of, okay, we have enough confidence in the project, in the capital campaign, that we can vote to move forward. There is that comfort zone piece, that $300,000 of the bridge loan thing that allows the board to use that bridge loan to bridge that gap between when the money's coming in and when money is going out. And I don't know who asked the question at the end of the table, whether it was Jeff or Mark, that they asked it of you, Bettina, and you pass it on to these guys. One of the challenges is, as you know, you've got some donors that are giving you money up front. Some are spreading out over 2 years, or some are spreading it out over 3 years. And it would be helpful, and don't expect you to answer that now, but for us, for Megan and I and the board that has to manage kind of cash flow, that if we had a sense of, what percentage of money is coming in based on initial donation, flat donations. Yeah, I know, you guys meet every Monday. You meet more than any other group around. So I know you know that, but that would help us, we had this conversation come up in the design team meeting, and we couldn't really answer the question at the design team, but that would help us and help the board know, are we gonna match the cash flow? If the board can get to the point where they say, we're comfortable, we're gonna meet the goal, okay, then the next question is, how do we manage the cash flow? And that's what gives Megan kind of the heebie-jeebies back there, is making sure we have the cash flow. How do we manage that? And, I think we can do it. I'm confident we can do it. It's just, we're now at the point now where we can talk about this, because, as you said, you were in the quiet phase before. Now, that's the purpose of this meeting, is to bring you guys, the design team and the board all into the same room and say, okay, now, how do we move this ball forward as a team?
and I guess one question to ask, and it's, I guess, a little bit of a challenge, is because we have to make this vote on February 11th, so that's about a month from tonight. is there something that can happen between now and then? I don't know what it might be, but I mean, will you be able to come back to us on February 11th and say, gee, since we last met, we've talked to a bunch more people and we've have some more commitments, or we've at least scheduled meetings with some prospective donors, just something to tell us that, that things are continuing. Right now, you say you're right where you ought to be, and to say that in another month would be, I think, really helpful to the board.
You know, the one thing I'll say is that there are some people who are potential major donors who want to see the bid numbers. So that's really the next time that we're going to be able to.
But that would be important information on February 11th to say,
Right.
we've talked to so many donors and say, you know, said, and they're waiting for the bid numbers, and when those bid numbers come in, that we're gonna get a strong commitment from them. That's all great information for us to have, because I have the town meeting warrant from the election. What it says here is that, I'll try to leave out most of the legalese verbiage, but basically, it says it authorizes the select board to issue bonds, principal not to exceed 1.5 million, subject to the condition that the select board make a finding that sufficient grants, donations, and/or donation commitments have been made in order to move forward with the project. So that's the question that we have to publicly vote on and publicly answer. So as much support as you can give us around that is gonna be helpful for us when we make that vote.
There's two parts of that, you know, obviously. One is what's the number, and how is the progress against the number? And we're not gonna have the number when we have to make this decision. So that's the basis of my 15 minutes of yammering, is show me the actions and give me the confidence that there's a plan that's well laid out, that's gonna get us there.
And I have to say, right now, I feel good about it. I feel terrific about what you folks have accomplished in a very short period of time. You guys are the rock stars of Rockport as far as this activity is concerned. We have a terrific group, and I feel really good about it. But confidence, you know, the more we can grow the confidence, and I think the better that's going to help you in your efforts to go out
Absolutely,
when you
yeah.
talk to people
It's-
as well.
Right.
And so, you know, if we vote on February 11th to issue the bonds, then I think that's something for you to go back out to your donors and say, hey, the select board has confidence. They're, you know, now can you write the check, or now can you make the pledge commitment? And it's a symbiotic process as we go through this. At least that's the way I see it.
And that's the way we see it. I mean, that's exactly right, Ken. Thank you.
I want to personally thank every member of this group who has worked so hard, you know, even if you didn't raise another dime. You know, the work that you've done so far and the volunteer time you've taken up and how seriously you've pursued this is just great. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. This is a group that Doug and I sort of pulled together, a year or so ago now, and Joan's pointing at me.
I mean, I want to support that. You worked hard to get a proposed design and cost in front of the public to vote on. The taxpayers, the voting people of the voting residents of the town of Rockport decided we're gonna have a library, right? The conditions are, the taxpayers will pony up $1.5 million, private donations too, and let's go. So we're gonna build a library. Now it's just, let's get there.
Good.
And one of the keys, and this is what we've talked about a lot in the design team meetings, is that the inflationary pressures on construction costs right now are extreme. And so the cost of waiting a year to do this is enough that it could make the project very difficult, so.
Just the value of steel pricing alone
Yeah,
could swing
yeah,
so much that
exactly.
it would make or break it.
Yeah, absolutely. Any further questions for the foundation folks? Yes, would you come up to the mic and introduce yourself?
Yeah, David Cockey. If you happen to listen to the last select board meeting, I had some comments. I don't know if any of you did, and Bill Leone had called me after that meeting at Doug Cole's request. I have to say, after my conversation with Bill, I was neither optimistic nor pessimistic about the ability of the foundation to raise the $2 million. I really felt like I didn't have enough information. As I stand here right now, I don't have enough information. If you ask me, are they going to be able to do it or not? You threw out a figure that you talked about, Philip said, 80%, 20% rule. I've heard that one. Sometimes I've heard it even will be a 90, 10% rule. There was a discussion there was comment made about identifying a list of high potential donors. And said, hey, we really did a really great job. We talked to a bunch of high potential donors and 66% of them committed. Got a little question. How many on that high percentage of those high potential donors have you not talked to? If you talk to your whole group of high potential donors, and you got 2/3 of the money, where are you going to get the rest of it? I'll throw out a figure, roughly similar figure I gave when I was here about a month ago. There's roughly 1,400 households in Rockport. Only a small fraction of them can write large checks. Now, you throw in some summer residents, you throw in some businesses. Let's just pick and you got $700,000 to raise. Let's pick a nice round number of, say, 140 major donors give, significant money. If you get 140 donors, you're going to have to get $5,000 on average per donor to get to your 700,000. That's not trivial. So I think there needs to be some real question. And I really think Jeff raised the right comments about, hey, what's your plan? Because what I've heard so far sitting here was trust us, trust us, trust us. This gets to Mark's comment. I don't think any residents voted for this project, or back up. I know I didn't vote for this project on the basis of there will be a trust us decision. My understanding was that when the decision is made, and this February date is pretty new one, publicly at least. I don't know when the select board became aware of it. I'd heard previously talk about like April, May. May have been mistaken there, but when the vote was held, campaign for the vote, it was the select board to make the finding. Ken read the verbiage. I know it's a little bit, confidence or whatever the particular word is. Not that you have to have an audited account that says that the money's in the bank. But I think the expectation is not that we'll have we'll be 2/3 of the way through and we'll be raising funds through the rest of 2019, and we really hope to get there. I think you need to have something more. So perhaps there's been a fundamental disconnect between the realities, which I don't dispute at all, of raising money for a capital campaign, that perhaps all along this idea that was given to the public that there'd be $2 million available, and a major portion of which, and to me, a major portion would be like 1.8 million, not 1.4 million, 1.3 million. A major portion of it would be raised with very good confidence of getting the rest of it by the time that the vote needed to be made to move forward this spring, which has now become this winter. Maybe that whole premise was fundamentally flawed. So I guess and I quite honestly think you do need to be a little bit forthcoming with, okay, you brag about, hey, 66% of our people we talked to gave us money. That's great. How many more do you have to talk to? You got major donors, so forth. Just there needs to be some confidence, because the worst thing that could happen is a scenario where we're back here next January having a discussion about everybody's finally had to, well, not everybody, but it's finally become apparent. This is hypothetical, and I hope it doesn't happen, and I don't really expect it to happen, but it could. We don't have the money. We're going to have a significant shortfall of $300,000, $400,000. We've got a structure that's underway but nowhere near done. What do we do? I don't think anybody wants to get that way. I know select board members have said they don't want to go back and ask for more money. So I think the select board's going to need to have needs to have some real thoughts about what does saying you've got the confidence at this February vote, because right now I see at least, so-called counting votes. I can see where the momentum's headed for some of you, that, the select board's not going to want to be the ones that stand in the way and say, we got to hit pause. So I think there really will need to be some discussion, and it's going to need to be a little bit in public discussion about what it means. Sorry it took so long, but thank you.
That's fine,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
the comment. I'd let you guys address that.
David, let me first take issue with what you said about our conversation. I'm surprised that you came away after we had spent maybe 45 minutes on the phone talking about the project, and then I sent you quite a large amount of information about the project, that you didn't feel upbeat about it.
The information you sent was generic fundraising project. If I was a potential donor, that was the information of rah-rah, feel good about this project. There was nothing specific in there. There was no figures, there was no numbers, there was nothing other than rah-rah. That looked to me like that was the package you'd send to a major donor, not to someone asking
What
questions.
exactly would satisfy you? What would you like to see?
I think Mark laid it out. I think you guys need two things. One, I think there's a plan for how you go forward. Second one is 1.3 million. Okay, let's look at a timeline. You hit $1 million in early October. I think I first saw the press release saying you hit the $1 million mark. It's October 15th, but I thought I saw that press release October 6th.
Okay.
Somewhere, early October.
Okay.
At the meeting, select board meeting, I listened to the tape, which was held the Monday after the election. I think somebody said you had 1.2 million. This is going well. $200,000 in a month. When I talked to Bill a month ago, I heard 1.3 million. Boom, now we're, okay, so that was in the month of November, after the vote, when I would have assumed there'd been a whole bunch of people holding back saying, we're not going to make pledges until we see where the vote goes. You would have gotten a lot of money. You got apparently 100,000 in pledges. Today, I'm hearing 1.3 million. So I'm assuming there's some rounding there, but that sounds like you really haven't been doing much. So if you haven't not been doing much, I mean, you haven't getting much money in. If you just look at a timeline of pledges versus time, it looks like that is flattening out. Now, presumably, you've got the confidence, you've got the optimism that it's going to take an abrupt turn and head up. But, that's just an optimistic mode.
So, beyond pledges, if I told you we had $500,000 in cash already, does that make an impression?
No, because since it's been noted that pledges are legally enforceable, although you probably wouldn't, and, the argument that Bill made is, hey, pledges and cash are essentially interchangeable in this game.
So
not quite,
a
but close to it.
certified check for $2 million is what would satisfy you?
No, what I think would and this isn't satisfying me, this needs to satisfy the board and ultimately satisfy the residents. I don't think anybody, I'm not arguing the library shouldn't be built. I think it would be great to have a library. I just gave you my scenario. What you need to do is provide something more than trust us. This is not a regional organization that can have a large appeal regionally and nationally for fundraising. This is not a mid-coast area nonprofit that can fundraise throughout Knox County and elsewhere. This is a project which is Rockport. Rockport's a finite size. You've got some real challenges. Okay?
Well, I mean, I want to say a few things,
But if you do, you need to go to the mic.
Yeah, up at the mic, please.
So, I mean, I want to sort of go around about just a few
You should
things.
introduce yourself, Ben.
Hello. My name is Ben Blackman. I'm the library director at the Rockport Public Library. when it comes to the timeline too, just to get that, that's just the top of my brain right now. You know, the population tanks this time of year, and it's the holidays. So, I mean, I know the way it looks like it's leveling off, but you will see it increase again. When it comes to the paperwork, I think everyone's been a little hesitant, not because we don't have it, but because they have to figure out what to share with the confidentiality issues, because that's a very important thing. I mean, I've been in a lot of these meetings. I mean, I'm not sort of a voting member like most of the committees I sit on, and they've got all the paperwork that they can give you to the minutia that they feel comfortable giving you. So I think that that's something that, given by the time the next week rolls around when you want it, they'll have it for you. We'll make sure that we get that. And you know, I think we've got to just keep focusing on the positivity of this. Like, we have done a huge and amazing job already, and we talk in this committee a lot. These people who are giving a lot of their time, they know how important this is, and they worry just like you do about dropping the ball. Like, that's not something that isn't talked about. I mean, we know, I mean, this project is like made or broken on the fundraising, and that's something that's like these people have all taken to their heart. So, I mean, at least from an emotional standpoint, know that people are like really working with, you know, their hearts in the right place. And we'll get you all the data you need. That's what we do.
Thank you.
And I would just say, Philip may be poised to say this as well, and others on the committee, but we have not talked to all of the identified people. And there are many people outside of Rockport residents who want to give money to our library. In fact, Philip got a check today from a man in Camden who gave us $1,000. So, and we are going to be going to foundations who are outside the area, who believe in libraries as the core and most important things in a community. And there are you know, writers in we're lucky in Maine to have some really wonderful, creative writing people who believe in libraries. So there are many resources we're looking at that are beyond just the citizens of Rockport. And I would like to assure the gentleman that we are leaving no stone unturned and looking everywhere we can. But I would also say that capital campaigns usually do have a big surge at the beginning, and then they do level off. And I would say, especially more towards the end of a campaign, you're really focused on more small donors, and those take more time and more effort. So it's not a straight linear line up. But I feel confident, as does our group, that we will raise the money. When it actually is going to be in our hands in order to pass over to you is a little harder to predict. But I think we feel very confident that and not just trust us, but I think we have real proof from a fundraising perspective. The amount of money we've gotten already indicates that we are in a good path to be successful.
One question that I didn't just think of is, you've got 540 in cash, and then you've got about 800 promised. Of that 800, what's the breakdown for year 1, 2, and 3?
Just so happen to have some numbers here.
Well, I knew somebody would want to know that, so.
Well, let's go, this was done a couple of weeks ago when we were at $1,250,000. So we had pledges this year at $700,000 in this period. And because 12/31 comes doesn't mean that that's the end of it. It's sort of like this period, because we have things that are coming in the next 30 to 60 days. We have cash on hand of a little over $500,000. And we have pledges that are due that'll make up the difference between 500 and 700 that'll coming in this period. Year 2, in the next cycle, we have $350,000 of the pledges which are scheduled to come in. And in year 3, we have $200,000 that are scheduled to come in. So we initially decided on, when we put this program together, that in the first year it would be somewhere in the vicinity of $700,000 or more or less, and then it would be $650 and maybe $650. So if you look at the math, you really only need to raise $400,000 in the next year and $350,000 in the year after. There doesn't seem to be a big stretch going forward.
And that's helpful. That's some of the stuff
Yeah,
that.
it's not a big stretch.
No, but that's some of the stuff that will help
Yeah.
us, okay?
Yeah.
You've got X coming in.
And what really makes the difference are the very large donors. And this is where we can excel. It only takes a small number of large donors to make the difference. So it's very important that we continue to talk with folks and encourage them. And we have people who are large donors who, we consider major donors that are very helpful in the community and spreading the word. There's a lot of excitement out there, and a lot of people want to see what the building committee and what the select board are going to do now. We have people who are waiting on you, not waiting on us. They're waiting on you to do things so that they feel comfortable making the donation. So we're very optimistic that we can meet the goals. And we're doing things, far-ranging. I'm making an arrangement to have lunch with somebody in Florida in 2 weeks.
Your wife?
Just happened to be there.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, and we can't really tell what comes of these things, but these are the kinds of things that we do that are going to get us to the end.
Well, I think Joan's comment in response to the gentleman's question is that you have not yet talked to all the prospective large donors. That's a key piece of information, I think, that's really important. And I'd like to ask too, you mentioned sort of in passing the $100,000 matching grant or challenge grant. Could you give us a little more detail about that? Because that's kind of an exciting possibility, I think. And sometimes those matching grants really spur people on to say, well, gee, I can make my donation
Yeah,
twice
no.
as much. So if some details about that would be great.
Well, we've had a lead donor step up and allow us to, to put out a challenge grant, which would be, matching dollar for dollar up to $100,000, everything that donor would be contributing. It's a pretty simple concept. You hear it all the time on public radio if you're listening to that. Yeah. So we haven't come up with an actual date and time to launch that particular challenge grant because it's only about a week old. So we're working on it.
So is that 100,000 counted in your 1.3 total or not?
No, we've only counted, this is important for everybody to hear. We are only counting what we have a signed pledge for.
Okay.
If we don't have it written down on a piece of paper, which should technically, yeah, you could probably wiggle on that if you didn't want to, pony it up. But it's a binding agreement, at least morally binding. And if we don't have that, you're not hearing about it.
So if that 100,000 is challenge grant is successful, then we're up to 1.5. Is that correct?
No, we're up to 1.4.
Because the 100,000's already been.
I guess that's what I.
Because we already have the pledge for the 100.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure of, is that if that.
Well, see, this is part of the reason you can't go full on, tell you every little thing we do, because,
I understand, yeah.
some of this is a subtle part of fundraising that is just
Okay, well, I'm hopeful that we'll have another positive report from you guys in a month that'll help us make the decision that we have to make. Does anybody have any further questions?
And one thing that might help, perhaps, Jeff, I mean, we can show you a plan of how we've gotten to where we are. And, we've had it all mapped out. We had campaigns, we had budgets, it's very methodical.
If they were the top, 3 activities in a month for the next few months that were identified, it would be
Okay.
most helpful. That's all I'm looking for. I'm gonna talk, we'll have all our major donors, or potential donors, talk to by May 17th. We're gonna do a mailing campaign in April. Big picture, general activities, that's all we're looking for. That's all I'm looking for.
I'm on the board of Coastal Mountains Land Trust.
And would you introduce yourself to the folks at home?
Nick Ruffin. And I've also been working on the library but not on a committee capacity. The one thing I think you aren't listening to is the fact that a lot of the money that is donated in this community is seasonal. We're getting close to raising $4.2 million. It didn't start yesterday. It started 2 or 3 years ago, but it doesn't come in the wintertime. Because most of the residents who are willing to contribute to these to our projects are here in the summer. Then they go somewhere else. And they may be thinking about all this, because we mail things to them, we call them up, but we don't get checks at the same rate.
I'm pretty sure I heard it, but I also am being asked to make a decision in February, which is an
I
off-season
understand
type
that,
of thing, too.
But we can't control where people are during the winter
Understood.
season, so.
But we'll
can
be
I
here
say?
February 11th.
You know,
But you have to understand that.
I'm good, Joan. I'm good.
You
I'm
got-
good.
I don't know how we ever had D-Day. Is it gonna work?
Is there any, the comment has been made a couple times that you haven't approached all of your identified, primary donors. Any idea of like, what percentage of those donors have your identified list? How many, is that a number you can share?
Yeah, now, so there have been 67 person-to-person solicitations that have produced 44 pledges or gifts. And, our prospect pool is probably a total of 100 and, it varies a little bit, but call it 140.
Okay.
Round numbers. And now,
Quite half.
I mean, those are people that we know quite a lot about, we think, where there's some personal connections. We have lists of property owners that we're also been just doing more of the direct mail, dear, and if we know their first names, Bill and Joan, or, whomever. But if you don't have that personal connection, you're not.
Give to people.
People give to people. So we're going to be curating, the larger lists to get, to see if we can identify more personal connections. And that we've broadened this committee, which has been great. There have been 2 more volunteers that have joined. And every time that happens, you get a bigger network and you get more information and you get, more person-to-person interaction. So
In big term numbers, you've raised about 2/3 of the total project cost by making calls to less than 1/2 of your identified list, which is a good, that seems like a pretty good odds for me.
That's of the identified list, and then you've got,
Then
a
the
gazillion other
expanded
donors
list,
that
right.
did something different.
we've got, 200 or 300 other people who are high net worth individuals who are capable, we believe. We don't know if they're motivated. So, it's a question of capacity plus inclination equals, the likelihood of a gift.
The other thing I'd like to comment on is that you don't often get a commitment from a donor the first time you talk to them. There may even be some people here that
I've had to have multiple
have
calls. Yes, Bill, like
multiple
me, yeah.
calls. So you have an idea of what goes on.
Understand.
And it takes time, and you can't force
No.
this.
But you get a target of, you're gonna talk to 100% of your
We'll
target
eventually
group
get
by
to,
some
we'll
date.
eventually get to talk to all of them.
You're gonna talk to 100% of your next group by some date. That's
Yeah.
That's what we need to know.
And we haven't talked at all about foundations, we haven't talked about the business community, so that's all yet to be explored. And
All grant applications aren't in, but you know, there's some date here in the next
Yep.
month or two that you expect to have all
You
your.
have had some
But grants
come
too,
in.
Jeff, that's a good example. A grant can be a year down the road or 2 year down the road, and it could be 6 months down the road before you hear even which way the wind is blowing on it.
But the action is that you'll have 100% of your grants applied
Yeah.
for by April 1st. Or
Yeah,
that's what brings confidence.
okay. I get it.
I mean, this is tough. It is a chicken and an egg kind of situation. And we've known this from the very beginning when the select board said, well, can you raise all the money by X, and then we can decide whether or not to build the library almost. But, so I appreciate your concern and your wanting to be as assured as possible. And we will do everything we can to help you feel confident, as confident about it as we do. And I just want to acknowledge that, and it is tough, because this time needs to go quickly. We don't have a lot of time to back things up, so the decision has to come in February. So we'll do our best to get you the information that you need.
And I fully understand the difference between results and activities. I get that part. And the results are going to be variable. But the activities that this group can do certainly can be well laid out in concrete. That's fine.
Correct. Happy to provide that.
Okay. Well, we're coming up on 7 o'clock, and I think that was our target. And I would like to end this evening by just sort of summarizing my view of what we've heard tonight. We've heard that the design, the construction process is proceeding on schedule, that we have a budget that seems to be working very well. We have a private foundation that stepped forward and done extremely well in a short period of time and seems to be on track toward meeting a goal. And I think we want to end on a very positive note with that. And while we're doing the live streaming here, you guys have a website, Rockport Library, or rockportlibraryfoundation.org, is that correct?
.org,
Okay.
correct.
It's on the
So-
billboard right out in.
Yeah, and we have a sign out there, so.
Hey, speaking
so
of which,
For those who have been listening.
see Rick on that.
For those who've been watching and listening tonight, if you have been motivated to make a donation, then the foundation has a website, and they would be happy to help you with that. And I think we have a significant vote that this board has to make in a month, and we're hoping that we continue to get good news from both the building folks, the design folks, and the foundation folks, and that we can feel confident in making that vote on February 11th. Anybody else have any further comments? Okay, great. Then I think we're all through, and we will stand adjourned.
Thank
Thank
you
you
all
all for
very much
coming,
for
and thank you
coming.
very much for
Appreciate it.
your contributions. Phenomenal.